Welcome back, everyone, to Meditations by Gregory T. Obert, bringing you the best new guided meditations and mental health discussions every week. I'm your host, clinical psychologist Dr. Gregory T. Obert. Thank you so much for joining me today. And today we continue the series that I started a while back that seems like people have been enjoying, which is Therapy 101. And today it is all about veterans. So if you know a veteran, if you are a veteran, this matters. Everything that we talk about today is specifically tailored for veterans. So, one thing that I want to throw out there, well, I'm going to throw out a few, but one thing I want to throw out there, it's going to be heavy. We're going to talk about things like trauma. We're going to talk about things like combat. We're going to talk about self-harm. So, just know that that's going to come up today. Even if that's uncomfortable for you, please listen because there's going to be a ton of great information for you. Second, if you're someone who is in distress, you are a veteran, if you've gone to the VA and you've had this thrown at you a million times, but I'm still going to throw it out there, please dial the Veterans Crisis Line 988 and then press 1 for veterans. You don't have to be in crisis to use it. You can just talk to someone immediately, and that can be helpful in and of itself. 2 more things before we get started. If you are a veteran, if you know a veteran, I know I ask this every week, please, 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 for real, share this episode where you can. It doesn't take much to click share. It doesn't take much to send a link. I'm asking that more emphatically right now because for a lot of veterans, they tend to suffer in silence because of their training. They're told to make it work, right? Don't show any emotion. So please do share this with anyone that you think might benefit. I would love to have this episode go as viral as possible so that we can get help to all of the people who need it. So please, 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 please share this episode. And lastly, if you're interested in taking things to the next level, this episode is brought to you by my private practice, Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute. If you want to get serious about improving your mental health, you want elite and discreet psychotherapy, click the link in the description and it'll take you right to my website. You can learn all about it and send me a contact form. I look forward to getting started with you as soon as you are ready. Again, Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute. Take your life back today. So I want you to picture this stat in your head. Veterans are about 1.5 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population. And that sounds intense because it is. It is an unfortunate statistic, yet it's the truth. I myself have worked with veterans, and by the way, all opinions in this episode are my own. I don't represent any organization outside of my own. And unfortunately, I know of at least one who ended up committing suicide. It was a while after we had worked together, and there may be more that I just don't know about. But it's unfortunate because those people were suffering, and you don't want that for people. At least I don't want that for people who I view as the nation's heroes. In fact, they don't actually have to suffer in silence anymore because psychotherapy can be helpful. And let me tell you a story about working with a veteran that was completely and totally life-changing for this person. So I had the pleasure of working with somebody a few years back, and he had been traumatized while he served in the military. I don't want to name branches or anything because I want to keep things as anonymous as possible. And this particular veteran had seen a horrific vehicle crash to the point where he was charged with going to clean up, the mess and just seeing the absolute just gore of the scene. This had traumatized him so much that for years, this is something he tried to get out of his head with things like substance use. It was something he tried to get out of his head by isolating from other people, and it just did not work. Fast forward to doing some treatment with me. We ended up doing a treatment called prolonged exposure, which I'll get to in a little bit. And it was life-changing. Very difficult treatment. He had a very tough time getting through it. And after he completed it, completely turned his life around. He was able to get steady employment. He was able to work on his substance use goals. And in fact, I had the pleasure of running into him somewhat recently, and just outlook, mood, so much better than what it was before. The power of psychotherapy cannot be understated when it comes to how it can help people change their lives, particularly veterans dealing with trauma, although they don't have to be dealing with trauma to still benefit significantly from mental health treatment. So today is going to be all about what are issues that veterans tend to deal with, how can psychotherapy help? And then I will share some more personal stories along the way about what my treatment with veterans has done for them. Now, in case someone is wondering, I myself have not served. However, I have a long history of military service in my family. And as far as I know, it dates back to at least World War I. And I take that, I'm very proud of that, the people, my ancestors and my family who served, because they did something that I didn't do. They did something which was put their lives on the line. Now, of course, not every veteran is going to go see combat, and that's great. The fact is, though, that they were willing to. They were willing to sign on the dotted line, and they were willing to defend me, someone that they've never met before. And that is something that I take really seriously, and I'm grateful for that. So many veterans don't like to hear the phrase, I shouldn't say many, some don't like to hear the phrase, thank you for your service. Some prefer welcome home. I tend to say, whether you wanted to or not, I appreciate your service. Thank you for it. And if there is a way that I can help give back, I am happy to do that. And one of the things that I am doing right now is going to help people understand what it was to go through the military as best as I can without having done it myself. So let's dive into it, shall we? Some of the issues that tend to happen with veterans, I mean, there's numerous ones. That being said, I do want to focus on some of the big ones that often come up. So, of course, you're going to have things like depression and anxiety because veterans are people, and they are going to experience these emotions regardless of whatever they tell you. Now, one of the interesting things about this, which is why you don't often see the actual sadness, nervousness, or clinical symptoms, clinical disorders like depression or anxiety with veterans, is because they tend to hide it. Now, you as a civilian might be wondering, well, why is that? Why would someone want to hide the fact that they're in pain? Well, I want you to think about what it's like to actually go into the military. And by the way, this anecdote does not take into account any family of origin stuff, because sometimes veterans grew up in not great households. So, of course, they're going to learn things from their childhood and they're going to bring them with them. So we're going to set that aside for just a moment, and we're going to focus on just joining the military. Think about signing the dotted line. Okay, you've signed up, you are Uncle Sam's property for however many years, and you are shipped off to basic. And basic is intentionally difficult because they're trying to put you through stressful situations so that if you end up finding yourself in a stressful situation like combat, you know how to handle it. You can stay cool under pressure, and you can do the difficult things necessary to survive. So you go through basic, and you are essentially taught how to be self-sufficient and how to be an elite fighting force. One of the things that I often joke about with veterans I work with is, yeah, but what if you were feeling kind of tired? What if you were a little nervous? You could go to your CO, your commanding officer, and you could just tell them about how you were feeling, right? And then they typically laugh at me and they say, of course I couldn't. I'm like, right. Why can't you do that? Because at best, they're going to tell you, rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. At worst, they might take advantage of you because they know that you're going through something. They might transfer you somewhere that you don't want to be because, oh, well, you can't cut it. Right? So these are the things that they teach you in basic. Just really kind of shut up and deal with it, because we have a mission to do. We have to accomplish whatever the mission is. And this is a great, great philosophy when it comes to winning a war. It is not a great philosophy when it comes to living life as a civilian. And it shows. So pulling up some stats here, and all the stats that I'm going to be going over, they are either from the VA or NIH. There might be one or two random ones here, but that's mostly where they're coming from. Veterans are 2 to 5 times more likely to get depression, to have some sort of depressive symptoms. It affects about 31% of veterans. And again, like I said, it's 2 to 5 times higher than the general population. So that is a significant statistic. Now, think about this, though. If you are taught to keep your emotions shoved down, well, of course, I'm not going to acknowledge them. I'm not going to deal with them. I'm going to do anything that I can to avoid talking about or working through those things. Now, again, my disclaimer, this isn't all veterans. Right? It's just, it tends to be what I see, and the research tends to back that up. So if you're a veteran who is very open about being depressed and you're looking at family and friends for support, that's awesome. That is really great and good for you. It's just not every veteran often does that. So of course depression and anxiety are going to come into play because they're people. Now, something else that tends to affect veterans, particularly veterans in combat zones, really OEF and OIF veterans, so Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. So these were Afghanistan and Iraq in the 20-aughts, and maybe ongoing depending on operations that are going on. They are more likely, people that serve there, and veterans in general, are more likely to have memory loss, mood swings. In fact, about 6.7% of OEF, OIF vets using VA healthcare have a TBI diagnosis. So what is a TBI? It's a traumatic brain injury, and this comes about due to IEDs, bombs, explosions, car crashes, things like that. Now, you don't have to be in a war zone necessarily to have a TBI. I mean, accidents happen all the time across the military, and when accidents happen, unfortunately, sometimes people get severely injured. Maybe something got dropped on your head. Maybe you fell from a high place, and you have a TBI now. So, of course, if you have a TBI, about 89% of those also have some kind of mental health diagnosis. New onset anxiety occurs in about 25.6% of soldiers with TBI compared to 9.8% without. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the neuro aspects of TBI, frankly, because I'm not as trained on that. I will say, though, that depending on how your brain gets rattled, depending on what parts of the brain get injured, could be severe, might not be as severe, depending on the timing, how old you were. Maybe you recover okay, maybe not so much. But this, of course, can affect people substantially, especially when it comes to things like mood swings, memory loss, a lack of inhibition, especially if that TBI was in that prefrontal cortex, which is right behind your forehead. If you point to your forehead, that's where your prefrontal cortex is. So, of course, these issues, again, not exclusive to veterans, just a higher likelihood of them. Now, Another issue that tends to affect veterans is going to be substance use. So self-medicating for pain or trauma tend to be the big, I guess, soup du jour, right? Of course, pain can come about, chronic pain can come about because of military service, not because of military service. Same with trauma. Yet a lot of veterans, because they tend to internalize things, they tend to hide things, you are going to see an increase of veterans who attempt to get painkillers, who attempt to use substances. And let's be honest, in the military, there is an intense alcohol culture. I don't know if it's still this way, depending. This could be like a time thing, but some of my middle-aged veterans would talk a lot about, oh, the best place that you could have been deployed to, it was the Philippines, because it was basically just a big party. You go over there, a lot of alcohol. It's obviously a mostly peaceful country. You're not really dealing with something like, say, if you were deployed to the Middle East. And even if you're not in the Philippines, there's just going to be a lot of alcohol everywhere because you just drink to, take the edge off. Sometimes you're tasked with shifts that are 12 plus hours. And it's not like you can just take the next day off. You're expected to show up, so you're going to shoot yourself full of caffeine, drink all that coffee. My Navy people in particular, they tend to drink a lot of coffee. But then you're also, maybe to take the edge off because things are stressful, you're going to go drink. And that, you're going to have people around you that are going to want you to drink more and more and more. And that is going to really lead to substance use disorders. Because eventually, you're not drinking to take the edge off. You're drinking just to drink and maybe avoid withdrawal symptoms or just to fit in with people. And then your body becomes, physiologically addicted to alcohol. So you're in trouble there. About 11% of veterans presenting for the first time at VA meet criteria for some kind of substance use disorder. And in 2023, a national survey showed that about 14% of veterans reported at least one substance use disorder. So, of course, in the military, you're focused on alcohol because that's really the thing that you can do. People are going to sneak other things in there too, but you're going to be in pretty big trouble if you have other things that you're consistently using. Once you leave the military, though, again, if you got that chronic pain, maybe you got an injury, again, could be military-based or not, you might be going for those painkillers, you might be going for the harder drugs, whatever you need to kind of get you through the day so that things don't feel so heavy. Substance use disorders tend to go hand in hand with military service. Again, not all. You see a veteran that, enjoys couple glasses of wine a few days a week, that's not necessarily a substance use disorder. It does mean, though, that there's just an increased likelihood.